I'm Jordan.
And I'm Rosanna.
And on this podcast, we explore how to take life off autopilot
and relentlessly pursue a life worth living together. Hello, and welcome to Season 5, Episode 4 of the Relentless Pursuit podcast, celebrating our wins. Why we don't, why we should, and how we can.
Ooh, this episode has a subtitle.
Well, you know, I was feeling good.
All right, celebrating our wins. So what we think we mean when we say celebrating our wins is recognizing that throughout life there's a lot of milestones that we may meet or goals that we accomplish that maybe at the time don't feel that big, or at least compared to what you're ultimately pursuing. But how important it is to actually pause and celebrate those moments as you go, rather than feeling like you haven't done anything until you reach the big moment, whatever that may be.
Well, and we take the time to celebrate birthdays, right? We celebrate holidays, anniversaries, sometimes big, sometimes small. But it's true. Are you only going to celebrate your 50th wedding anniversary? Is there fault in celebrating your 32nd, which seems rather ordinary and mundane, and just the next in a series?
Wait, so is an anniversary a win? We made it another year.
Well, I'm just saying, okay, so we talk about celebrating our wins. So let's talk about the things we do celebrate. We'll celebrate a birthday. We'll celebrate a holiday. But when we have a win that's personal or professional, or that's, taking a step in a series of steps to do something great, why don't we celebrate some of those smaller things?
Yeah. So let's put this in perspective of some of the different domains that we're talking about. Normally when you hear conversations from us, we're talking about either a financial domain or just a personal hobby kind of domain, careers, kids and family,
health,
and
finances. Yeah,
all those different areas that kind of make us who we are. And I think there's opportunities in each of those areas to celebrate as you go.
Sure.
So let's talk about your business. I know this has come up, every few episodes we end up touching upon it. But there's been plenty to celebrate there. So why don't you give us an update, and we'll talk about what we have done or what we should be doing to celebrate.
Okay, so let's even just rewind a little bit. We've mentioned this a little bit in prior episodes, prior seasons, but basically I was a high school English teacher. We had kids. I gave up that career to stay home with our kids, and very slowly over the course of the last 8 years, I somehow fell into an event planning business. It started small with one event, one time that someone asked me to do. From that, in March, about 8 years ago, then somebody else asked me to do another one, to the point where I was doing 3 and 4 smaller events for the course of 3 or 4 years. And then that started to grow a little bit. And then I did one wedding for my sister-in-law, Sarah's twin sister, Rachel. And I had her write me a review. I had her share some photos with me. And I charged a very nominal fee to kind of trying to break into the wedding market, wedding industry. I had no previous experience other than some event planning. And very slowly from there have been starting to build what has become a very, do you say niche? I don't know what the specific word is, but a niche in the day of wedding coordination business.
I like niche.
Niche? Yeah. I think other people listen to say niche, but is it French? I don't know. But regardless, it's been slowly building. Obviously 2020 hit, and that was kind of completely sidelined what had seemed to be the start of something after some very successful weddings in 2019. And I had started kind of planning, dreaming, brainstorming about what this could be. And I thought to myself, when I do 12 weddings in 1 year, then I think this will finally have become something, almost like what I had done from taking one event one time 8 years ago to where I had gotten it wasn't any kind of success or anything worth celebrating. That if I did 12 weddings in 1 year, then that would be the start of something. And then after being sidelined for the most part in 2020, 2021 hit, and I found a groove. And in the course of a 6-month time period, I had booked 18 weddings. I had a friend of mine who I had hired as an assistant, kind of paid an hourly rate to when I needed help. I have moved her from the role of assistant coordinator to a lead coordinator. I have a new assistant on my team, someone that I have become friends with that I thought might fill this assistant role. I've even had a few friends and family members helping me out as needed because now I'm sending my new lead and my new assistant to do their own wedding while I'm doing a wedding simultaneously and am shorthanded. I have one weekend coming up with 3 weddings in one weekend. I've had 2 weekends where there are 2 weddings on the same day. And this is the thing that you pointed out to me. I am getting very insightful and rave reviews from my clients.
Oh yeah, I love reading these reviews, and like when I leave a review, I'm like, I feel like it's relatively generic. Like I appreciated the service, they did a great job, would definitely recommend them. And I look at other reviews as well, and it's just like, sometimes there's a specific experience or something that they relate, but with the folks who have left you reviews, every single one of them is like surprisingly just like detailed and enthusiastic, and it feels like they have a feeling that they're doing their darndest to translate into words, and they are struggling to do so because there's just so much joy from the experience that they had from you. So I am always pleased to read these reviews about the work that you've done for others. So that's your list, and the list goes on.
My list, but
Ba-da-doom, ba-doom, bada.
right. So, and for a long time, and even this year, so a couple weekends ago when we had 2 weddings on the same day, promoting somebody up and checking on them during the day. And I had this realization like 2 days later where I texted Amanda and said, I can't believe we did that. Like, I can't believe I did that. Like, I did this one party once, one time. Like, this is something. And she said, Rosanna, it is something. I'm like, I'm so proud of you. Like, you should be proud. And this is kind of what stemmed this idea for the show today. I was like, why am I so afraid to acknowledge and celebrate my success? I do not have
Is afraid the right word?
a little bit. I think for a long time, we can talk about why I haven't, but I'm afraid to acknowledge or celebrate my own success. And not in a like, hey, look at me, look what I'm doing. I don't need acknowledgement from others. I don't need others like support, but like, why can't I name the fact that I'm doing something that is successful? I'm to the point where I'm now looking at, another lame term, leveling up. I'm now reaching out to somebody who does something in the same industry and is doing some business coaching with it, like saying like, if you're at this point and you're looking to grow the business or you're looking to like expand your reach, or like, these are the next steps because I've been there. Like, I'm now considering those things because I can acknowledge my success. I can acknowledge the talent that I have, which is based on like the rates I'm now able to charge and the reviews from my clients. But like, why, whether it's personal or professional, whether it's with your health or your relationships or your family, why are we afraid to acknowledge and celebrate our wins?
Yeah. I think that's very interesting, and so we'll transit. So the format for our conversation will first focus on why we don't, then we'll talk about why we should, and I think those will kind of blur together, and then how we can, and we have some specific ideas for how we can do that too. But I think you mentioned like fear is one of those factors that just kind of holds us back from wanting to acknowledge that. I also think like there's this ideal picture in our mind of what it means to like have made it, right? Maybe it's concrete and maybe it's not, but unless we get to that big success, then we haven't achieved anything worth celebrating. Like, there's still work to do. I think of Michael Jordan, like every time he won a championship, instead of holding up the number of fingers of championships they had won, you know what he did?
No.
He held up the number of championships they had won plus 1.
Oh, really?
Because he was thinking about already like the next one. Like in the midst of celebrating a current championship, he would hold up an extra finger, thinking about that next one. And I'm not saying the man didn't celebrate either. But I think that that's part of our fallacy too, is thinking like we've never quite made it. There's always another level to get to. There's always another milestone to mark. There's always someone bigger that we can compare ourselves to in one way or another. And so I think why we don't is because we don't really think of celebrating wins as something worth doing when there's so much more work to do.
Yeah. Well, and when I was thinking about like, so why don't we? And I think for me, I've always erred on the side of being like humble and quiet and still, even when I win. Right? Not like on family game night. Then I will rub it in your face that I'm beating you because, it's
That's because you never win.
what's fun. Oh my gosh, stop. It's what's fun between friends. But, like, I think like I always taught, like you play your cards close to your chest. You don't let everybody in on what you're doing all the time. You're not everybody is privy to like my next goals, my quests, my next step. But is it because that's what we should do? Or is it because I'm afraid of failure? Or I'm afraid to have other people see my failures and my flubs, right? Like I'm my own biggest critic. One of the moves I made about 2 years ago was advertising on the Knot. That's a pay to play. It's advertising, but you have to pay them to advertise on there. But through that, right, you've got brides both contacting me like through their like messaging system and calling me and setting up calls. And I could tell you, like I've had probably in the last 2 years over 160 inquiries. Of those 160, maybe only half like get to the next level of a phone call, right? They see your pricing and then they like, some people just bow out right there. And then of half those phone calls, like how many did I actually book? And so like for me, it's like it got me out of my comfort zone to like pay money to promote myself somewhere. So that was like if you're good, do you have to do that? But like that's, it's a part of the process. So it's like, you don't tell people you're doing that because like what will they say? Of those calls I took, like how many did I like just totally botch because I had never had to like get on a call and market and promote myself. But like through that process, I learned how to do that. And now when you're like, oh, how was the call with your client? I can tell you if I booked them or not, like just based on the phone call.
Yeah.
Just because I've learned along the way. And like, that's a success. Like 6 months ago, I wouldn't have said that that's a win for me. Like I've learned how to like promote my business. I've learned how to, to showcase myself in the best light to book a client or a potential client. And so like, those are all wins along the way, but why wasn't I celebrating those things? Mm-hmm. Is it because they're not noteworthy? Sorry. Not important. And I don't think that that's the case. Mm-hmm. So it's, why are we so afraid to like celebrate? Like, and not that I need to go out and have a glass of champagne over that.
What it does look like. Yeah. But I also think about just like, you don't want to come off as prideful either. And so sometimes celebrating, if you're like telling someone else about not just what you're working on, but what you've achieved, like it can come off as bragging, or at least that's our fear, is that we don't want to like kind of put people off by talking about something that we're excited about having achieved.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I don't think about it in that light because over the course of, I would say the last 3 years, you've always said to other people, oh, she runs her own business. And I would just kind of like, well, like, yeah, I do some weddings but even the way I talked about myself and my business, right, was like, as if it was just a hobby or I didn't believe in myself. But like, I shouldn't have like, just because I am not booking 60 weddings a year or just because I don't have a team of 50 people under me doesn't make it any less real or any less important. Like right. It's okay to call it what it is.
And I think that it's a little easier to, you say, like toot someone else's horn, right? So it's easy for me to like brag about what you're working on or what you're achieving. And same thing, like when I graduated from graduate school, like there's nothing big, but just like with the family, like you hung a banner and we had like a commemorative moment with like
dinner
some cake and with my parents, right? And that was not this like huge festival, but it's something I wouldn't have thrown for myself either. So like having a spouse who can like recognize and cheer you on and then like kind of help stamp those moments is helpful. All right, so I'm thinking about why we don't, and I think we have some legitimate reasons. But I'm curious, like, well, why should we? If there's always something to continue to pursue or to work towards, then what would you say is the value of celebrating what we're calling wins as we go?
When you celebrate any achievement, whether it's big or small, it gives your life and your work meaning. At the end of season 4 of the podcast, we celebrated what was celebrating 50 episodes, which maybe isn't a big deal to a podcaster that has 1,000 episodes or has a bigger reach. But we started this as a hobby, 50 episodes in a year's time. Mm-hmm. That's something to be proud of, right? We took up a hobby, an endeavor, and we're sticking with it. And so there's nothing wrong with celebrating consistency or showing up or doing a good job. Yeah. And so I think that's part of it. It's it gives it meaning. It gives it purpose. And I heard it stated as celebrating our wins isn't a lack of humility. It's a principle of gratitude. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to do this, right? Mm-hmm. That I get to build this business, that I'm doing it alongside of some friends.
Well, I think you have to make sure you have that posture, though. That's not automatic, but adopting that posture of gratitude helps those wins be more appropriately celebrated.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's sometimes easier too to get trapped in the seriousness of life that we forget the fun, was it 2 years ago? The Knot has this thing. Again, you're paying to advertise on there, but if you have so many reviews, then they review all of the reviews. And if it turns out that the quality of your reviews is high, then they say that you are the best of the best on the Knot. And so I had enough reviews and I qualified for it. And I have a plaque that says, Rosanna Canapano Event Design, best of the best on the Knot 2020. I got the same one for 2021, or maybe it's 2019 and 2020, but I have 2 plaques 2 years in a row. But I remember the first time I got it, I get it. A lot of people get that if you're on the Knot and whatever.
It's a little bit better than the you've been selected, you're the who's who
of high school students or whatever. Yeah. But I remember that night 2 of my girlfriends came over with a bottle of Prosecco and are let's that's cool. Neither of us have a business and no one gave us a plaque on our imaginary business. You're doing something. And so, it's just fun. That is exciting. No, I'm not the president of the United States and, I haven't fed the poor or anything like that. But I've been slowly working on this, right? While raising my family, I've been pouring time and effort into it. I'm doing a good job at what I'm doing. So maybe it's just that. Mm-hmm. And even now, I'm working weekends. So on Sundays after I do a wedding, you know what I do to celebrate? I do nothing. I don't do laundry. I don't cook. I give myself a day off to
Is that
enjoy.
a celebration, though? Yeah.
But I think it can be, right? Yeah. Because I could get back at it on Sunday and answer all of my inquiries and work on what's happening next weekend. But celebrating doesn't have to mean a bottle of champagne or a massage or an expensive car. How do you celebrate the wins?
Yeah. Another thing about why we don't is that I don't think we set, this might sound funny, but I don't think we set small enough goals for ourselves. Right, when we set a goal, it's usually big. It's a major milestone, and I think having smaller goals along the way give us more excuses to celebrate. So I think it's been several episodes since I've mentioned this, and I'm impressed with myself. But it reminds me of jiu-jitsu a little bit.
I thought you were going to talk about The Godfather.
No, but I remember just when you're training, you just get choked and your arms turned into pretzels all the time. So I'm the first time I do that to someone else and they tap, I'm going to go get a Cinnabon and I'm going to go celebrate. And actually I didn't. So when I finally had that first moment and the guy tapped and I was yes, I finally submitted someone. And then I just went home afterwards.
You and your Cinnabons.
Yeah.
The 90s called, they want their Cinnabon back.
Cinnabons are timeless. Anyway, that was just a small, and I didn't need the Cinnabon to celebrate, but just a small enough goal, the next little thing that I could reach. And so I could probably, I haven't done this, but I could probably set another little bar for myself and then celebrate those as well. They don't have to all necessarily be pre-planned, but I think that we're just aiming too high all the time, that anything less than that long term or that big goal just feels insignificant. So you're talking about celebrating wins as celebrating those rungs on the ladder towards the roof that you're trying to reach.
Yeah. I mean, what is your ultimate goal with jiu-jitsu? It's something you've just started, right? It's literally 2 months old, this new hobby, this new interest, maybe 3 months. But what is your big goal? What's your end game with this?
I don't know. Right. I mean, right now I'd like to have a black belt within 12 years.
Okay. So that's your big goal. but there's going to be so much, like, right, you're currently a white belt, so right, there are multiple belts in between that. So like that'd be like saying like not really acknowledging the fact that like when you move up a belt, like that's a big deal. And no one's saying like, you're going on vacation when you reach that goal, but it's like those are attainable goals that you're constantly working towards. And so if you're being consistent and you're constantly working towards it and you achieve those, like, why don't we celebrate, right? Like, yeah, finally someone tapped out with you, right? You finally didn't get choked to death in one of your runs. Like, that's great. Like, you've been working on it, right? And you came home and the kids are like, oh, so cool. Like,
Well, it's fun even just to celebrate with the kids because they
Right.
happen to be there, and then anyway, that was just an example of like reasons why we don't, or like how to make it easier to do. It's just to have smaller goals that we can work towards and check off. I'm reminded of remember the conversation with the Bowmans in season 4 as well, where they were just starting to sell these gourmet nuts. They just wanted to make it into 10 stores, and they had the chalkboard, and every time that they would list like a new store that they were in, they would write the name down, and it was
change the number.
a thing, and their kids were involved with it. And when they got to 10, like that, for them, that meant something. That was kind of what they were working towards. So, and that's totally obtainable, if you kind of keep your eyes on working towards that, and you kind of have this team rallying and celebrating as you go.
Well, and I think part of it too is we forget how far we've come. And I think that really does have to do with what you were saying about like we're always comparing ourselves to something else, right? Because I'm not the most famous Chicago day of wedding coordinator, right? Like most people in Chicago are planners. And so like my niche is day of coordination. And right now that's kind of where I want to be. I've found success in it. I'm doing well at it. And so I would like to grow that. But like maybe then at some point I grow out of that into something else. But sometimes it's like we're so busy comparing ourselves to somebody else that we're not looking at, if we look behind us and we see the growth from where we started to where we are, whether it's intentional or whether it just kind of happens, and not kind of happens like it just arbitrarily happens, but because of like hard work and persistence, like that's amazing, right? Like that's what we want for our kids, right? To grow and to move upward and to attain and to reach. But if we're constantly looking around at what everybody else is doing or how many followers they have, like, right? Like I used to like obsessively check like, oh, how many people liked this post, or like how many people are following now, or after I post after a wedding, like how many followers do I get, or how many hits do the reels have that we're creating like on our events? Like, I mean, really that means nothing.
But it could, like, again, if that's something that you're working towards and you get like X number of followers, maybe not for you, but like someone listening, like maybe that does mean something that's worthy of celebration.
Well, sure, but like, so what I do at the beginning of every year is like I write down like how many followers like as of January 1st, and I like try to see if like there is growth, and like kind of look at that, and again, not going to throw a party over it, but like if I'm putting time and effort into my social media and that's growing, then that's great, and it kind of is a good way to kind of track where I'm going and what works for my business and what doesn't. But if we're not celebrating, if we're not keeping track, I think sometimes maybe we get lost in what we are accomplishing. And, when we don't know what we're accomplishing, then I don't think we know where we want to go. So one of the things, in my list in my notes, it says like, are you keeping a success journal? Maybe you should. Are you writing down your goals? Are you keeping track of your achievements? Are like from, for your calendar year, your business year, like where did you start and where did you end up? And how does that help you prepare and plan for what's ahead? Mm-hmm. And I think that can be really impactful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just having that reflection, because that helps to fuel growth alongside the celebration along the way.
Yeah.
All right, so let's say like someone is on board with us so far. They're like, okay, like I understand maybe why I should. I understand why I haven't yet, but I'm certainly like working towards certain things. How can I celebrate wins appropriately?
Okay, so I have 5 things, and maybe it's 4, but I've drawn it out to 5. But the first one is take a moment and enjoy it. When I get a review from one of my clients, I am like walking on sunshine, like cue that song, I'm walking on sunshine, right? Someone wrote me a multi-paragraphed, very detailed review of my service.
You like send it to me.
And then I
don't see it. And you're like 2 minutes later, you're like, did you see it?
Did
I'm
you
like,
see my review?
Did I see what?
Right? Like, take a moment and enjoy it. Like, enjoy it. Like, I smile, I'm excited. But what's funny is when I enjoy it, it motivates me to like want to do more.
But let me ask you about this though. Like right now, like all of your reviews are nice, but as they keep coming in, do you think you'll enjoy it? Like, do you think you'll have that same feeling a year from now or 3 years from now as you do right now?
That's a good question. So up until now, it's really my business has been about my success, right? My business is called Rosanna Catapano Event Design, right? And now I'm kind of bringing some other people up into this with me. And they've gone from being assistants who were not named in my reviews to people who are being named, right? Like Amanda was on site and she was amazing. Rachel was on site and she was great. And I'm finding joy in having people that I've trained under me, right, represent my business and my brand, and they are also being celebrated. And so some of my joy has shifted where it's not just about me and what I'm doing, but I've built something else that other people are coming into, and I find joy when they have success in my business as well. And so like
So
I think it will
so
change
the
over
source
time.
of that win will change. So I was going to say that I think, if you work very hard on a Saturday, then on Sunday is kind of like a day off for you where you can really relax. Like I would even say like that's more of a celebration. Like before you look forward too much, just look back on the previous day, give yourself a sort of a pat on the back in a sense, like a job well done. I'm going to go easier on myself
I'm
today.
going to take a bath today. Yeah.
Right. I think even that to me like looks like a celebration in a sense too.
Yeah, I would agree.
And at least like this first one where like you're taking a moment before moving forward, you're looking back even at what you just did and acknowledging like, hey, that was a job well done.
Yeah, and part of what I do, and I know you've seen this, like I'm on my phone a lot the next day because I take a lot of raw footage for my couples. And then I send them any behind the scenes photos that I've taken. I usually create a reel where I splice a bunch of pictures and videos together, pick a song that I think like suits them, and I send it to them because I'm so excited that I got to be there. I got to witness one of their best days. I got to make sure that it was one of their best days. And then like as that like helper, like I want them to enjoy it forever. And that's like I kind of gift them this little, like I send them a little text note. I send them some, footage, a video, some pictures. Yeah. And like
So
that's
are you
how I
still working?
celebrate.
Oh, that's your
No,
celebration.
like I get to like kind of enjoy it. Like, talk about patting yourself on the back. Like I get to enjoy the fact that I had a great day the day before. I'm dog tired, but I enjoyed it.
Okay, that's number one.
Number one.
Just
Number
take a
two,
moment.
express your gratitude for 3 things that helped you accomplish it. I like doing this. I do it, and some of my assistants laugh. I usually thank my assistants that work with me, like the next day or that night when I get home. I'm like on a high. I'm usually home between like 11 and 12:30 p.m. and then I'm like awake for an hour because it's like I've just I'm on a high. And I thank them. And a couple times they're like, Rosanna, you pay us to work for you. You don't have to thank us. But I always feel like I do because they don't have to go. They can go and show up and they can work, but they bust it for me. And I'm thankful. So I thank them. I always thank you for like taking the helm at home. Like I could not be there doing what I do if you weren't back with the kids. And sometimes it's not you. It's sometimes my parents are lending extra hands to make it happen. And I'm thinking of ways to thank them. And sometimes it's with words and sometimes it's with tacos and, whatever it is. But I acknowledge that I cannot do what I do just myself. Mm-hmm. I even sent an email to the vendors that busted their butts with me on behalf of the couple to say, we couldn't have done this without you. Thank you for your professionalism. Thank you for your extra efforts. Like, I appreciate you. Mm-hmm. And that's, that part of gratitude where it's my success. There's a lot of gratitude in it because it's not just me.
That's good. Okay. So gratitude.
Number 3, take a pause and reflect back on the accomplishments it took to get there. And that's like that stuff that I was listing this morning or earlier in the episode. It's like, don't forget where you've come from and don't forget all the sacrifices you made along the way to get where you are. And sometimes you have to go back. Mm-hmm. Right? I scroll back to my feed to some of my first parties, my first weddings, and it's like, if it wasn't for that, I would not be here. Mm-hmm. So I'm always thankful to past clients. Number 4, tell someone about it. Share the joy. Don't be obnoxious, right? If we know all those people who post their gym selfies every single day about how great they look. Like, great, that gets old. But like, I can share a review with you. I can, text my assistant and be like, can you believe we did this today? Like, mm-hmm. It's okay to share that joy with other people.
Yeah. And I think like, outside of your business, like I think fitness goals are legitimate and those could be publicized on social media. I think like any wins, like publicizing those. But you're also talking about frequency as well. Like if it's, if this is like a daily kind of let me tell everyone what I did today and then tomorrow, then that becomes a bit obnoxious. But like having legit goals that you then are finding ways to share, that can be useful. But then again, like social media strikes me as funny too at times, because sometimes you're just like putting it out there publicly for whoever. Whereas like maybe there are things that I've posted, but I think for the most part, when it's like tell someone about it, like I would tell you, or I would tell your parents or my parents or the kids, like the people who are closest to me, like, hey, this I did this thing, and like someone who understands it, instead of just like throwing it out for the world to comment on or not.
Oftentimes I don't share my business stuff on my personal Instagram. I share it on my business Instagram because that's where I have a lot of potential followers, or even people who are on the border of like becoming a client, or people who are recommending me to others. So like when I get a review on the Knot, then I post it on there, because like people who have booked me, a year from now, they're like, oh, good. Like I booked her, I made the right decision. Like, and then they share like, this is what people are saying about her. Maybe you should book her. So for me, that's like a business thing. I do not post everything about my business on my personal page, because I'm not, like, my friends and family can celebrate me for who I am and my relationship in their life. Like, and they can, while they can promote my business or whatever, like, I don't need to like wave it in anybody's face all the time. Like that's
Right.
that's not who I am. It's just what I do. So, and then the last one is silly. How can we celebrate our wins? Celebrate it. It doesn't have to be a party. It doesn't have to be an expensive gift, but in what way can you acknowledge your success? Can you acknowledge your win that is meaningful to you? And maybe it's just about keeping a success journal and writing down your goals. Maybe it's just something as simple as that. Maybe it's a cup of coffee.
So
Maybe
number
it's
five isn't really a tip. It's just
to do it.
just do it.
Just do it. I'm always so focused on the next wedding or event, because I'm having them every single weekend or multiple in a weekend. Like I don't get to relish in it as long as I can, because I'm already on to the next thing. And so it's the same thing with our kids. Like we don't cherish today because we're going to do it again tomorrow. So it's like, how do you just slow down a little bit, just pause a little bit, soak it in, enjoy it, extend the gratitude, before moving on to the next thing.
Yeah. All right. So that's one thing that we can probably build into our lives a little bit more intentionally for all kinds of like domains and personal goals, whether they're professional, whether they're just personal, whether they're family related. So maybe, I don't know if it's practical to necessarily like list every domain and have like very like set, like smaller goals and win. I mean, we don't want to be celebrating wins like every day for different things,
Yeah,
It's
it
kind of
might
like
be excessive.
Yeah, if you really wanted every day to be a holiday, right? You can be like, oh, it's National Donut Day or whatever, right?
You can celebrate as much as you want.
Right. But like finding the most practical areas of our lives where we are working towards and then achieving that growth, and allowing ourselves to celebrate that in hopes of spurring on the next degree of growth as well.
Yeah, and you know what? When you're celebrating some of your wins and you let some people into that, it does inspire and motivate them to do the same thing for them. It doesn't mean that they have to do what you're doing, but it may inspire them to say like, oh, wow, this isn't her degree. This isn't her background. She dabbled in it a little bit. She got her, like, it challenges people to maybe to seek that out in their own lives.
Well, that's what I was going to say too, is look at the reverse. Like when I do have other people telling me like what they're excited about or what they've achieved, like that is inspiring. I'm like, oh, I want to maybe not do the exact same thing, but kind of take that inspiration and apply it towards this domain in my life and see where that leads me.
Well, and someone recently told me like, well, I would really like to do this, but I don't know that I have the time, or I could never be like you. And I literally laughed out loud, and I'm like, I'm trying to figure it out as I go. And I'm trying to move towards talent, and I'm trying to do it. It may look very polished if you check my social media feed or my reviews, right? Like, yeah, she's got it all together. This is easy. I'm juggling my 3-year-old at home while taking calls, while the dog is like, it's not as polished as it looks online. And so I think sometimes you just got to go for it. And you were the one who encouraged me to go for it. You encouraged me to dig in a little deeper and to do it if I wanted to do it. And I think sometimes, we need that push.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope that you have plenty of wins that you're celebrating and that you're working towards, and we look forward to hearing those. So, speaking of wins, why don't you help us have a win? Leave us a 5-star rating and a glowing review online that Rosanna can then read multiple times, and we can share with our friends and family.
We
too.
can smile big and text them to our parents.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us this week, everyone. We'll see you again next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening to today's show. We hope you will use this conversation as a starting point for your own. We hope you're encouraged to think and act more intentionally.
If you want to learn more, you can visit our website, therelentlesspursuitpodcast.com, where you can find notes on today's show, plus additional blog posts, and you can subscribe to our free members list.
Please subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends.
Facebook and Instagram are 2 great places to connect with us for daily doses of our quotable quotes, behind the scenes, and real-time photos, videos, and challenges.
Until next time, let us know how you are taking life off autopilot
And relentlessly pursuing what matters.